everyone on point. I'm really excited to share with our next guest, Armand Terruli, who's an associate partner at Sheppard Robson. But there's something there that when we first met and we were having some conversations, and I thought actually there's someone who's more than just architecture, because it's all about humanity, buildings, AI, creativity, and future society. And I thought, well, we just touched on that very briefly, and I thought this would be a great guest just to see, especially so we don't talk to architects enough, I don't think. I mean, there's a lot of facade inspection and engineers, but architects and seeing how that comes across and what's really keeping you up at night would be really good to hear. So welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Rob. Thank you for the invite. Appreciate it. What keeps me up at night? What keeps me up at night? Probably the next door neighbour's dog. It keeps barking all night. That keeps me up at night. I don't worry about work anymore. I've learned how to switch off. Wow. I think that's quite important. After years of daily stress, you realise it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. After all of, when you get all these little deadlines and you're rushing to get to the deadline and then you send it through and then nobody looks at it for 5 days, it's just, I sleep very well at night.
No,
so it's a lifestyle choice. It's not to say that I don't keep looking at my phone though. And I don't sort of delete my emails. I think we all do that.
I think you're
but that's only because it's efficient. Because otherwise, my mobile phone just fills up with gobbledygook, and I've just but you get back to work after 2 weeks of holiday, you've got 2,000 emails to delete. So I do tend to find myself going through the emails and just deleting them. And if I see something really important, I'll go, well, I'll deal with that. Probably that doesn't help my cortisol levels, but there you go.
Well, I suppose it was a leading question, because I'm thinking most people think buildings are made of steel, glass, concrete, but what is the most important material in a building's future is possibly information these days. How do you feel about that? And are you passionate about that intersection?
Well, it's the way it was going to go, really, wasn't it? I mean, because of the nature of how we're designing with computers nowadays, it's going to go that way. Everything's so finite, and all the checks and balances. Data has to come into it at some point, and you need to have the chain of custody, don't you? You need to have that ability to not only pick the right product, and hopefully the product gets picked, but then someone else has got to deal with it further down the line when the building's been handed over to the facilities management team. They need to make sure that they know what they've got. So yeah, we're building. I mean, I'm looking out at the office here and everybody's got a computer, right? And not only just a computer, a laptop. They've got 3 screens. They've got a laptop screen, 2 other screens. It looks like what used to be one of those financial
trading
houses. Trading, yeah, the trades just like that now. And there's an Excel sheet on one side, and then there's, and then there's a drawing on the other side, or some 3D, and it's just data now, isn't it? I mean, when I started 37 years ago, it was still drawing boards and pen and ink. So yeah, it's moved quite quickly. And where's it going? Well, yeah, AI is going to push it into the realms of everything's going to be live and data driven, which is, well, I think most industries are going to go that way. Yeah, I think it's a good thing. But yeah, data is the way it's going.
Do you think? I mean, I heard you talk about golden thread. And not being a filing cabinet and it being a memory of the building. How do you see that? I mean, one of the things that I constantly hear is like, if a car has a VIN number and a service history, why don't buildings have a digital identity? Complete.
Well, yeah, that's where it's going. I mean, yeah, they should do. We're building digital twins. We have to, and most of the large scale supply chain that I talk to now, the window manufacturers and the door manufacturers now, they QR code what they do. We already have stamped windows. yeah, you need to know what you've got there so that when someone comes over, takes over the building, they can just, they can hit a QR code and then you know what you've got. So the materials passport aspect of things is really important. It feeds back into the digital twins. You know exactly what materials were there, the whole chain of custody, how many slaves died making it. You know what mine in Indonesia was ruined to get to that point. All of that sort of stuff. It'll all be there. Yeah, including your carbon, how much electricity you used. Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, I've only worked on one building where it's got close, and I don't think it's been monitored as well as it should be. But there's definitely digital twins out there in the commercial world. I would have thought that some of the other more governmental or sensitive buildings, like your nuclear power stations, I'm sure they're digital twin to death because they do all their trial testing. But it's the way it's going. What do I think about that? Well, yeah, I grew up reading sci-fi and comics, so I was always thinking, why isn't the world all like Dan Dare all the time? And I was expecting there to be drone taxis and stuff like that. It's just only occurring now, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I just think that particularly in this country, we're probably the UK, that is, it's quite slow. I mean, I think places like China, where I'm going to in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be seeing it firsthand there. They've got buildings. I've always said, wouldn't it be great if buildings could talk to each other and share resources and everything?
Yeah.
We don't do it over here, but over there they do. You go over all the buildings are all synced in, aren't they? As some sort of massive backdrop interplay with LED screens all between them, all sharing stuff, and you've got swarm drones above your head. It's fantastic. I can't wait. Bring it
Oh,
on
well,
in the correct moment. That is, I mean, I don't like the militaristic side of things, but I think that's all fascinating. If that's where technology is going, that's quite exciting. Not too sure about the surveillance and the control aspect of things. But then when we talk about golden thread, I mean, that's just, pardon the pun, that's just one that's just one strand of something that we've created over here following a disaster. But it should have always been like that anyway, in my mind anyway.
well, yeah, I mean, and I love, to be honest, I've been always hear a follow-up conversation. I can't wait to hear what you thought about when you coming back from China, because buildings here without a golden thread, it's like suffering institutional amnesia. I mean, turning up to a building and going 20 floors up, and someone says, "Can you change that?" The risk is huge. And that's why I think, like, that's what really started me on this journey. It's like the O&Ms, or those records, the maintenance records, safety records. Um, I mean, I don't understand how insurers can actually insure anything without knowing what they're insuring. And that's the build you talk about China. I mean, the building stewardship that when I was in Hong Kong, I talked to a few portfolio managers, and they're not as advanced as you managed, you were expressing there about they're all linked up, stuff like that. But there were managers who were sharing information about buildings on a regular basis. They're saying, "Okay, well, we're starting to see failures here because we're so close to the sea, and therefore we should look further
Mm.
back." I don't know if that's being done, as I said, from an architectural point of view. Is that there's special
It
group are doing that, or
it's so convoluted, isn't it? I mean, I think it's definitely, you've got cultural overswing on top of everything because I'm just looking around the building we're in. The building we're in here is an old piano factory built back in Victorian times, and the company's been here since the 1970s. And it's just, it's gradually being reused. There's still single glazed windows made out of timber, that probably contravene every single building regulation currently. But it's nice and tucked in. I went up to Manchester last week,
yeah,
and it was like a breath of fresh air. I was like, wow, this is quite cosmopolitan. I haven't been up there for about a year or so. And I was just going up to Manchester, and there was a different vibe, and it was much more urban and ticky tacky, and the trams running everywhere, and different sort of vibe. And then I just thought to myself, we do get quite London centric about things, I think, and we get caught in that world where it's still playing around with brick and block and everything. Um, we're quite fortunate, the company that I work for here, that we do have some forward-thinking clients, particularly in the tech sector. But I don't think we're really thinking that far ahead. I don't think the money's here as to what they're doing over in the likes of Dubai or in China. And it's a different cultural mindset there, though, isn't there? And it's I mean, don't get me wrong. When I first went to China, the buildings, the tower blocks that saw being built. I mean, I always sort of said that China was always 75, 80% there, because it didn't feel like it was probably QA checked, and there was a sort of a different. We went into the lifts and it, even though it had been commissioned 3 years earlier, they still had all of the padding everywhere, or they didn't really perfectly stop at every level and all those sorts of things. It just felt. However, they've rushed to build these fantastic super skyscrapers in record time in Shanghai, and that they build. By the time we're even thinking about trying to get a planning application on Terminal 5, they've already built 2 airports, from nothing. So how are they managing that then? How's that? Why can't we do that? How come in Japan when they dig up the road, it's done by the evening? You don't leave traffic cones everywhere. There's this cultural differences that overlay everything there, and different constructs and contractual setups. And I think maybe I'm wondering whether or not, actually just thinking about that out loud, whether or not we're a little bit techno averse here. We would think about digital IDs. Is that a good or a bad thing? Well, they've had it over in China for ages. There's mass surveillance everywhere. Everyone pays for everything with Alipay and or WeChat, and it's just a given, and it's nice and easy, and no one complains about it. But they're all sort of marching the same way. But there's no political discourse, so no one talks about the government or anything, because you'll get done. So it's kind of, I don't know. It's a difficult one. See, I'm a bit pro digital ID. I don't mind all of that, but then
nothing to hide.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Is that a good or a bad thing? I do get a bit worried about over control. Maybe if there's data centers that have got everything, then does it just mean that it just consolidates that into those with the power and the money, so that ultimately all the data centers just get controlled by the tech bros? So I think that's the most important thing. I think we can digitize all of our buildings, but when we're all part of the digital domain, I mean, do you know how much your per annum, how much your digital information, your personal data is worth? Do you know what it is, Rod?
I did read something, and it's something like it's in the hundreds of thousands.
It's 10 grand per annum, right? 10 grand. That's yours. That's your digital data that's being fed away through socials or whatever. I mean, that should be yours, right? So if they want your data, there should be an opt-in, and if you want it, they should buy it off you, not just snatching it for free. That's the dividing line, I think. I think that's where the interesting fights are. I don't think people realize. I think that's going to be a future thing that we'll be concerned about. I'm not sure whether or not they'll come through Europe or from ourselves, but
I think there's
see what happens.
That's already Karen. I'm working with a guy called James Schwartz, pioneering the IP economy, and actually you control it and you sell it. So I think that's there's different avenues that are coming out. I know you worked with is it Ghislaine Waddington?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my wife.
Oh, your wife. Okay. So looking at digital twins for health and longevity, and actually putting all that information in, so that if you are, I don't know, you're running a marathon in the, Paris or wherever you are in the world, and something happens, that you can get a flock of doctors dial into that digital twin. When it's a digital twin or digital shadow, who knows? But let's say the digital twin at the moment. So do you have a view of that giving away that level?
Well, as in the human. Well, yeah, she's an expert on that. It's the human digital twin. That's her whole. She's a professor in that at University of Greenwich and King's College. She's been on about this since the 90s.
Yeah.
About the body is. I mean, we're everything that we do, we experience through our body. Okay. I mean, disregard consciousness and all those sort of arguments, but everything is through the senses, through the vehicle of our body. And the body should be at the center of everything, basically. well, it is. I mean, everything we experience, hot, cold, light, whatever, through all of the built environment that's created by a whole array of engineers and architects. It stems, it's your experience. Your experience, Rod, is slightly different from my experience because my eyes are slightly worse than yours, and my hearing is definitely a lot worse than yours. But it's my experience. Now, if I was carrying one of those little aura rings or those other body mod wearables, and there's lots of artists and people who do that now, and they're tracking it. So my wife tracks herself all the time. She's found out stuff about herself that she didn't know that was happening to her, but was already feeding back. In terms of like your body temperature is quite high, you need to go and lie down for a little bit. Those sorts of on a base level.
Yeah.
It does come a bit obsessive because there's always she's always checking the phone every day just to make sure the data's going in and out and all the rest of it. But I think that's the way it's going to be going, and whether or not we're going to have implants to do all those sorts of things. I mean, she's got an implant in her hand that allows her to it's like a very low frequency RFID tag that allows her to have all her information on there, so that if something does happen to her, that theoretically, a paramedic can come along and swipe it, or she can theoretically, if it would work, she could open the door of her house or get through one of those oyster things on the London transport. Is it going that way? Are we? I'm quite pro that transhuman sort of cyborg interface thing. Again, it's like that's the way it's going to be going anyway. I think human beings will become like another level of. It'll be in the next level of Homo sapiens. It'll be like a Homo technical, if you know what I mean. But what does that mean for the world? I think, yeah. I mean, I don't think people discuss that a lot, but. Yeah, it could mean that there'll be the us and them, won't there? There'll be those who can afford to have all that fantastic, liver transplants and blood transfusions, or change your eyes or your brains, or or upload yourself into the net. I don't know. Those sorts of things are going to be happening, but what does that mean to the billions who can't afford that or are left behind? I feel a bit. I feel a bit constrained by that. The same way when we're designing buildings. Sometimes, I get really, I have to step back, going, where is this client coming from? What's their actual remit? Generally, it's making money. Okay, I get that, but actually, do they really care about what they're doing? Some of the jobs we have in here have got quite a heavy social conscience to them because they're government backed, for example. So I can understand that, and they tend to be long drawn out, going through 1,000,001 committees to make sure that you're still on target, still tracking in there. But no one really, some of the more mundane buildings, no one's really talking ahead about these things. Everyone's just in it for their own bonus at the end of the year, which is kind of frustrating.
So what would you change? Like, where's the? I mean, this whole point, it was really about what's the potential, what's the opportunity, what's the impact, next steps, transformation. Like, what thing for a day? What would you transform? Like,
What, in a day?
well,
What would I transform in a day? I think no. I think I'm a bit. I don't know. I think I'm a bit. I'm a bit of a sort of mentor stroke disruptor. I think that you do 7 years of architectural training, and actually, what you're really trained to be is to always think in and around the box. I think that's what I seem to come away from it all. So we're always questioning everything. There's no solution that's always the right solution. There's always 2 or 3 different solutions. You can go down different tracks. So when you're collaborating with other people, we're there to sort of. We're unusual in that respect that we have the ability to see everything as architects, and the ability to sort of say, well, it could go down that way, it could go down that way. It's almost as if we're a sort of a micro mini quantum computer without the quantum computing. So I think our job is to challenge all the time, challenge everything all the time. Why are you doing it? Are you sure you're doing the right thing? Is it really about cost? Is it really about, do you know what the value of that really is? Do I really have to argue this window over that window? Do you really think that by putting in, by being cheap in your capex, that you're not going to give yourself an opex problem a bit further down the line? I think that comes just from being obstinate or or challenging. I think if there's not enough challenging architects around anymore. There's too many easy peasy yay sayers who think the computer's going to do everything for them, and I don't think there's enough. I think that's also part of the technical aspect of being an architect. I think there's architects who are technically minded and want to get down to the nuts and bolts and think about how it can be better for the future, or using digital tools to do that, like you're doing. And there can be architects who much more cerebral about things, and challenging the social construct, or the public discourse of where they think it should be going. But you know how difficult it is now to even challenge any planners or any local government to try to consider these sort of ideas. You'd have to be quite a power player, and you have to be quite a seductive dream seller to be able to do that.
Do you think that as a role for the architects should be those dream sellers, the challengers, the bringing the potential customer or the client on the journey to actually I mean, I was in Paris
Yeah,
recently, and I went to a church that actually St Paul's down in the Moray area, and it was an emotional experience, right? And I'm sitting there, and I was quite querying why I just went in. I was fine as I went in, and I was a wreck when I came out. It was designed to create some kind of emotional experience in there. Do you see architecture? Do you see? I mean, you said about like, we're all different, but we need to experience something in the building. Do you see any buildings today that have the same philosophy that?
that's a good question. You mean new buildings?
Yeah,
Um, First of all, I know where you're coming from. I I found myself over the years, I'd study all these things, and what is it about buildings that make them really special? And you'd hear about the Daniel Liebeskins of the world, who create, when deconstruction came out, and he created that the Jewish Holocaust Museum, and the nature of the constriction and everything, and you felt you were alone, and it was really lonely, and that sort of the play of the space was really, really clever. And then I thought to myself, well, there must be other buildings like that going back. Churches are very good at those sorts of things. And then when you go back and back, it's like, why would a church be sited in that particular spot? Well, because it used to be a pagan spring there or whatever. So I got really heavily into geomancy. The whole thing about the location of the building was the most important thing, first and foremost. And then when you start to really look at it, and it goes off into little conspiracy sidetracks about the Hawksmoor buildings. They're all and all the Masonic overtones, and the chapels, and all the mortar mixed with the blood of a young child, all those sorts of things. The more that there's that psycho drama that's put into it, that stitches the story, then it becomes like a given. Like at the moment, we're in that period when Gaudi's fantastic Sagrada Familia
yeah,
cathedral is finally finished. And I remember going there back in the 90s, and it was still a great experience. And just I remember you climb up a tower, and the tower didn't have any handrails, so you were hugging the wall. But then there were people coming down this spiral stone staircase, and there was a hole, and you could easily fall down it. But I don't know how many people have done, but there was nowhere to hold on to. So everyone was sort of hugging each other and carefully going around. And then you got to the top, and unless you were to go down the way you came, you crossed over a bridge to the other side, and the bridge didn't have any handrails. I remember walking across. There was a howling gale. This is in the 90s, 92. It was just before the Olympics. I just thought, and I suddenly felt God. And it was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die here. And I thought, what the hell? And I got to the other side, and I can remember getting back down. I was with my other architecture mates. We were all architects at the time, and we were looking at each other, going, "What the f was all that about?" We will never accept that in the UK. I went there a few years ago, and they've gone and sealed it all in now, and they put handrails and everything, because obviously it was a beautiful suicide point. And then I was wondering why on all these towers Gaudi put Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus everywhere. I thought, you clever bastard. Okay, that's quite clever. But then, how we wouldn't do that nowadays, would we? Because you'd freak the hell out of the client, or you'd be putting health, you're putting the public at risk, health and safety overlays. I mean, it was risky enough putting up solid petrol on Grenfell, wasn't it? But those sorts of things. Could we design like that now? Would we have the ability to do that? I mean, I think we would, but they don't come around very often. But then nowadays, I think we're all very much like, we've got computers, so we could do clever things with materials. But are we actually creating something that's going to be radically emotional? I mean, I've never designed a church, but and I wouldn't even. I think churches and cathedrals and places of worship, the really serious ones like Jerusalem or the Kaaba. I mean, I did the Faith Zone on the Millennium Dome, so I know a little bit about this because we spent 4 years talking to all the faith leaders in the UK so that we could get all the information that we could put together to create the Faith Zone and the Millennium Dome. And what we realised is that there was this, every major church, temple, gurdwara, whatever, all had certain functions which were really important, and were spiritually uplifting. And I quite like spaces that are emotionally and spiritually uplifting, but without the over umbrella of a religious overtone. Those sorts of places tend to be natural places, like a cave, where there's a cave in North Puglia in Italy, where the Archangel Michael was meant to have come down, and that's been venerated. And actually, when you go down into this, and there's a church on top of it, of course, but when you go down into this space and you walk into that, you do feel something quite radical. Thinking, well, what is it? Is it some sort of weird geomantic ley line or something? So I think
Where is
there's,
that? 'Cause I'm going to do
are
you
you
next.
Puglia?
June.
Gargano. I'll send you the link. Yeah, it's in, if you're flying into Puglia, it's Puglia down in south.
I'm
It's
going to be
the knobbly bit, the top Gargano. It's called Montangelo. I'll send you the link.
yeah.
It's that's a nice place, and close by as well is where Padre Pio, he's I think, was it Pope John Paul who made him a saint? Anyway,
Yeah.
he's a saint there now, and he's been around that area. There's Catholics are quite good at all of this, aren't they? But Jerusalem, when I went down to Jerusalem for the first time, went down to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which, by the way, not many other politicians do. They all go to the Wailing Wall and bang their head on that and keep going on about the Alaska Mosque. But when you go down into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and you go down there, and I think there's something about never-ending pilgrims going down to these places and you see all these carved crosses that have been there since the 1200s. And you're going down, and it's part of the whole journey. And when you get to the space, you do feel something,
Wow.
for sure. Yeah, I think, and whether or not that's the psychodynamics of lots of what we've left behind as human beings going in there, and you can feel it in the area. But I think that's why old buildings have this sort of this quality. New buildings, it's quite hard to do that. We can play around with a bit of light and shade and nice materials, but does it uplift the spirit? Maybe. I don't know how many buildings I've created that have uplifted the spirit.
What about the Eden Project? You worked on that, didn't you?
Eden Project, yeah, I did the Eden Project. Yeah, that was just a technological wonder. I think that was just right place, right time. When I joined Vector Foil Tech, there was only 6 of us. I was the 7th, and Ben Morris was the UK arm of Vector Foil Tech. And Foil Tech were the Germans who created the technology for ETFE. And yeah, they managed to convince. You see, that's the bit of fantastic dream selling with a client who had an idea, and it's like, well, and a great architect in Nick Grimshaw, who just said, well, why don't we just create this massive bubble? ETFE can do it, and Fry Otto and all these great ideas in the 60s. That they proved you could do these sorts of things, these stretch skins, these pneumatic structures. Why don't we try to do that? And actually, to this day, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the most efficient building in a sort of a Buckminster Fuller way in terms of absolute lightness. I think it's like 20 kilos per square meter, that building.
Mm.
But that's uplifting in terms of because it's this huge majesty, but also don't forget what's inside it is also quite important. It's a rainforest now. If you go to the biggest biome, it's a rainforest, and I think there's something quite nice about rainforests and greenery. I mean, I'm a sort of a I'm known as a sort of a not only a punk architect, but a sort of a flower punk architect. So I was born in the '60s. I
Mhm.
like my '60s music, but I grew up in punk. So if you come around to my house, it's green everywhere, and outside my house is green spilling out everywhere, and I go around guerrilla planting where I live. So um, yeah, I think nature things are quite important, right?
I think,
And special places in the world. You know, how does that wash with me when I'm talking about data-driven ideas and digital twins and all these sorts of things? It feels like it's the other end of the spectrum. Um, and that, there's on the one hand there's biophilic design, and on the other end there's super data-driven futures. There's definitely, I think, the circle links somewhere in there
well,
around the rim.
I think what links it, and I love I mean, Buckminster Fuller is definitely someone that I love, and he's
Yeah,
so,
we need more people like, but architectural philosophers. Well, he was an engineer, wasn't he? But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, someone who just liked playing with the maths, and then but it was just so insistently, like he carried on trialing out ideas. I mean, it must be great to do that.
yeah. I mean, he never focused on the problem. He just said, like, "Okay, well, I'm not trying to fix the problem. I'm just going to create a new
A new
understanding."
paradigm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a new understanding. Yeah.
And it's finished. It's strange that we talk about Bucky, but when and we really did have a very short conversation. But I just that's you came across as someone who's already thinking about new paradigms all the time. And where does this overlap? So the geospatial industry said to me the other day, when I say the people, I was listening to various different talk, and they said we were doing big data before big data was a thing. Which geographers have been collecting information
Mm,
and using, like satellite information to tell people who are trying to. I was having a conversation with someone, like elephants are being extinct, and they use satellite information to tell them which tree was causing that extinction because it being deforested. So they were planting new trees, and they could do that and channel the route at which elephants and other wildlife could go. And
that's
I
great.
think, yeah, and I think wonder what we're doing as well today. Like when we're looking at weather patterns, we're actually there's a perfect
Mm,
coming. We've got weather patterns that are going to affect us. We're building different buildings, and every time we put a new building in, it's changing the weather pattern in the city.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
wonder if that's where you're talking about guerrilla planting, like should we be doing some kind of uh, post, now we know all this knowledge. Now we know that how
Yeah.
these spaces
So yeah, I think um, I need to read a bit more about the subject about how because there's one thing, there's this urban greening factor we're meant to be ticking the boxes, aren't we? With the planners, you're meant to have a certain percentage of your building's got to have a green roof on it, and then that just gets whittled away by the MEP because they just chuck their plant on the top, and there goes your and okay, the blue roof suddenly becomes a flat roof, and then MEP will over it, and the urban greening factor is probably at 2 square centimeters of a sedum roof. Um, I think we need to be much more bolder than that. But then, the money people just go, "Oh, no, no, we're not gonna make our profit, are we?" Well, okay, it doesn't matter just 'cause, you've retired on your island and you're happily just, creaming the money, but actually you're leaving the rest of us to die. I don't think we don't have that discourse, do we? There should be a yeah, I think there needs to be like a massive. When I say green revolution, I don't mean yeah, I mean a green revolution massively. I don't think we've even scratched the surface yet. Um, I think there's things we can do. I mean, t- we could definitely be looking at energy and the solar grid for sure. I mean, it doesn't take that much of the Sahara Desert and bits of Saudi Arabia to create enough energy for everybody in the world. You know, a few square kilometers can be sorted as long as you can work out the distribution and how you can hold that energy and distribute it well. I think that's going to be one thing to think about. We can forget about all this dig rubbish that our friend in America is going on about, because those resources are going to die out very, very soon, and it's just a short-term gain for, just for whatever. But if we're going to be running all these data centers, you're going to have to go um, natural, solar, or wind. So that's number one. So I think that's one thing, and then I think space exploration and the ability to utilize the ring of satellites that were around us properly without just chucking all that junk up there, and actually utilizing that to be able to maybe patch into the grid or outside of the grid. And I'm talking about the energy grid. I think there's some clever way of doing all of that. But again, this is science fiction stuff that the likes of William Gibson was talking about, decades ago. Don't forget, look at if you want to know what's going on in the future, just have a look at Blade Runner again, or have a look at Star Wars, because all those screenplays, they base all those screenplays. They talk to physicists. They're going, where's it all going to go in the future? So I think that's why it's quite exciting. That's why I'm quite fortunate to be married to my wife, because she has access to all of these great professors around the world, and they're all feeding back in, going, well, we're doing this with agentic AI, and we're doing this with robots, and we're doing this with avatars and holograms and drones, and it all feeds back in again. And then she's looking at all this, going, well, how does this affect the human being? How do we sort our ethics out to be able to then get a policy in place in government and EU to ensure that the tech bros don't come and cream us all, wipe us all out, and end up with a dry planet before it should be. I think with some clever management, it's going to. I think theoretically there's going to come a tipping point. We're already seeing the shift in the global economy over to the Far East. How China carries on going the way they're doing, and if they are going to be following their green agenda, and then they close all their coal plants down, then are they proving that it can be done because there's the willpower there? If there's enough willpower for everybody to do that globally, then theoretically we can all benefit each other. But with a burgeoning population of the world, isn't that the biggest problem we're facing, according to David Attenborough? So yeah, we're struggling with all of these. Everything's intermeshed now. The more wiser we get, the more we realize everything's intermeshed. The butterfly effect's quite interesting. If certain things happen somewhere, it affects us here. I mean, look at the Straits of Hormuz. I mean, a couple of idiots fighting over some oil, throwing missiles at each other, is going to be affecting our toilet paper in the supermarkets. That's mad, isn't that?
Well, like Gaussian splats now, that the way that it affects geospatial people, that they've been creating these meshes and can model the whole of most cities in the world now, and
Wow.
and made meta tag, so we can model. I mean, people will be shocked when they realise that only 11% of the UK is actually covered in buildings. So we've still got quite a lot more space. I know we want to keep it green, but we've got a lot more space that we could grow into. So I don't think we're overpopulated. And I don't know if I forget where the place is, but there was.
I think we should use that. We should use our resources. I mean, we're sitting on quite a lot of history here, aren't we? And so you've got to deal with all of that. And it's very much, once you're behind your white picket fence, get off my land.
Yeah.
with a double barrel shotgun. There's a lot of that going on, isn't there? And all the politics and all the populist flag waving sort of just accentuates that. But then that's part of the way that the culture and academia and media are forcing us that way anyway, because that's part of the overarching agenda anyway, isn't it? Because there's a sense it's pushing us in a direction, whether or not it's the right direction or not. But there needs to be more people challenging that. And I'm not talking conspiracy theories here either. It's obvious the way it's going to go. There will be digital ID. There will be, but yeah, but then yeah, if you can track, if everything is going to be trackable and we can work out, I mean, as soon as quantum computers come around, you theoretically you will be able to make some very, very large. You can ask some very large questions and come up with some very interesting solutions that you wouldn't have thought about. They'll be working out mathematical problems in milliseconds. So then, by by rote, you would have expected them to actually work out lots of political problems as well. Well, it's interesting. I don't know. We'll be around at that time. I'd like to see man land on Mars. As long as that man's Elon Musk, that'd be fine. Keep him there.
Give them there. Yeah. What excites you more, artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence?
Ooh, that's a good question. What excites me more, artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence? Yeah, see, this is the human oversight is always the issue. Because even with AI, there's always someone's feeding in the rubbish in the AI, the agent in the AI. With augmented, theoretically, you are part of that intelligence. So I think there'll be a more human-centric intelligence. Yeah, but it's shit in, shit out, isn't it? It's all the data you put in. Most of the stuff that we're seeing, Claude and ChatGPT, they're all made from a bunch of kids in Silicon Valley. What do they know about Burkina Faso? You know, what do they know about Aborigines in Tasmania?
Yeah, in which case, then, where do you think creativity comes from? Is it
Oh,
culture, reputation?
where does creativity come from? I think it's a I think we're all creative. I just at different levels. I think I feel it as um, an impulse, a permanent impulse. Impulse is probably the wrong word because it sounds as if it's happening. It's like it happens all the time, and whatever the universe comes through my whatever I'm interacting with the universe, I'll have some creative impulse on that, and that could be anything. That could be an emotional impulse. It could be pulling out some paints. It could be going down and drawing something. I'm never still. There's always something happening. Um, I might just go and put on some headphones and listen to some music. I think I think I think it's a universal consciousness, but don't ask me to describe that in the next 2 minutes because I can't describe it. I think it's a I think it's some sort of nether thing that we can't comprehend in the dimensions that we've got.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that consciousness, the brain is a filter, and it's depending on how you tune that, and I think you can tune it so that you pick up on whatever, uh, and I think it's two way. I think it's not always you just a receiver of these things. I think you could communicate with it.
Oh
Uh,
no, we definitely transmit. We definitely transmit. I mean, the brain is an organ that it's just not being used. I mean, what humankind was like pre-ice age, 15, 20,000 years ago, and how can you describe some of the going back to buildings? How can you describe some of the accurate buildings that were put out there unless there was some very, very clever way of humans getting together to be able to create the really fine tune these beautiful blocks that could all interlink into these beautiful Mesoamerican Inca type pyramids. I mean, we still to this day we can't work out how they do it. How did how did how did Bronze Age man manage to create really the first Bronze Age man? How did they manage to create some of these really beautiful bits of tools that even now they can't work out how they how they actually set them in the in how they actually cast them. There's look at some of the finery and all the works that some of the Celtics did, even with very very fine gold thread. That even now we can't do it. There's we've lost a lot of that. I'm not saying that's the brain, but then the brain helps all of that because it activates you to actually create something. But there's a lot that we've lost I think, and that's why I think touching back to nature and these sort of power places is quite important.
I think another 100 days and not get to the
We
bottom.
could, yeah, we got a bit off piste, haven't we? I mean, I mean, I was when we met, we were talking about that fantastic interface you're putting together about the post evaluancy of buildings, and I thought it was brilliant because it was really clear and obvious, and actually it does what
Yeah.
we're all expecting there to be out there already. And actually, I was quite uplifted because I just thought, oh well, someone's actually done it, and it's doing it right. And then I just thought, this needs to be funded properly, and everybody needs to be doing this. It needs to be cross-platform everywhere, and every FM team needs to be doing this. But just to focus all your attention on that would probably give you grey hairs if you got any left.
But I like still, you do a day job, and I still spend, like any available time I've been spending on FIMS, which is the facade information management system. That thing that I showed you is already moved. It's already now, with the help of AI, it's already an entity that's growing and building, which is, at some point I'll show you how that's, and it was never meant to be, okay, this is something we own. It was just a discussion. It was like, let's all talk about, like where you started about China. Let's all talk about how do we empower buildings? What would the building say if it could talk? Like, what would it want us to? And I think that's the discussion I really want to have globally, all of us.
Yeah. You see, you're like me. You're a disruptor. We need more disruptors, but in a positive way. Not in a sort of disrupting, let's smash it all up way. I mean, don't forget that they had three Indian gods, right? They had Brahma, they had Vishnu, and they had Shiva. Shiva was the destroyer, and then Vishnu was the creator, wasn't it? I mean, so sometimes you need to sort of disrupt things to be able to create. But yeah, where am I going with that? That was a bit left field. Do you know what? You need to send me a list of some of the books that you're reading, and I'll send you a list back, actually, because I could do with a reading list. At the moment, I'm reading. What am I reading at the moment? What are you reading at the moment, then?
To be honest, I'm back to Socrates. I'm reading the book on.
Are you? Oh, good for you, mate. I was thinking about that recently, because I'll tell you why I said that. Because I've just gone back to the Golden Bough. About the history of magic and all the rest of it, and of course it mentions all of the old Greek myths and everything. And I thought I really need to get up with my Athenas and my Poseidons and all those sorts of things, because there's quite a lot of a lot of the myth in there is actually the constructs are quite interesting about how we always think the Greeks are the first democracy, aren't they? But there was a lot of underlying in there, what they created, what they believed in. This is all pre-Roman stuff. It's fascinating, actually. Well, we could carry on talking. I've got a meeting in 4 minutes. Rod, why don't we should meet up again? Outside of this podcast. I think there's I need to have a bit more of a chat about your background as well, because you just feel like someone I've known for quite a long time.